We are 2 days away from kicking off the 2025 NFL season. Welcome into Got It Covered. I'm Giovanni Heater alongside Raza Umarani. And Raza, 2 days away from the NFL kicking off. We got to preview the NFC now, my friend.
Yeah, home of the Super Bowl champs, as much as it pains me to say it, home of a lot of firepower. We talked about the AFC being the conference of quarterbacks. If that's the case, the NFC is the conference of all around pretty well built rosters. Not to say that the AFC doesn't have its fair share of those, but all of the titans of the quarterbacks play in the AFC. Really, the NFC is all about really well built teams from 1 to 22. So it's very deep and it's going to be very competitive at the top as always. There's plenty of storylines to go around. And it's my home conference. So I'm excited to get into it.
We keep talking about the AFC like it is the superior conference in the NFL. And then you have last year where the Eagles go out and take care of business in an emphatic way in the Super Bowl. And it's hard to protest that the NFC pulls just as much weight, especially with the emerging teams in the conference, like the Lions, like the Commanders, like the Vikings. I mean, it might be just as deep throughout.
Yeah, I mean, you had a situation play out last year where the Lions were the Super Bowl favorites the whole season, and then their defensive injuries just caught up to them. The year before, San Francisco was favored to beat Kansas City in that Super Bowl. The year before, I think Philadelphia was favored to beat Kansas City in that Super Bowl, and both those teams lost. So, again, at the top, you're going to have one or two teams in the NFC every year. We saw it with Detroit, Philadelphia, San Francisco, where they are just so well put together that even though they're not going to have the crazy Mahomes, Allen, Lamar level quarterback play, they're going to be in the Super Bowl and they're going to give you a fight.
All right, so like we did with the AFC, we're going to go division by division. We're going to discuss our thoughts on those divisions. And then, of course, at the tail end, we're going to give a full reveal, my predictions for how the NFC shakes out in 2025, Raza's predictions for how the NFC shakes out in 2025. And then we'll have another video basically combining the AFC and the NFC. And we're going to give our full-blown playoff predictions, our MVP pick, our offensive defensive player of the year pick, offensive and defensive rookie of the year pick, so on and so forth. So look out for that video. In this one, we're talking everything NFC, and we're going to go and start with the NFC East. Raza, this is your division, right? Big Commanders fan sitting across the way from me here. You got the Eagles, Commanders, Giants, and Cowboys. This is, in my heart, an opinion, and this is coming from a guy who loves the AFC. This is traditional football when you think of divisions in the NFL. I think NFC East, and then the other one is probably the AFC North, right? And those are kind of the two. Eagles, Commanders, Giants, Cowboys, no matter what the mix is, excellent rivalries across the board. Eagles, of course, come out on top last year. The Commanders make this incredible run. They played the Eagles in the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia. We'll see what the Giants look like. Of course, Brian Daboll kind of gets another chance here, gets to handpick his quarterback in Jackson Dart. They also have Russell Wilson. They also have Jameis Winston. So Russell Wilson's going to be the week one starter. Does Jackson Dart come into the shuffle as the season progresses? And then the Cowboys. I mean, that's the blockbuster news is Micah Parsons is no longer there. Jerry Jones deals him to the Green Bay Packers. And what do the Cowboys look like? I think it's going to be an excellent offense at times, but can the defense hold its weight? So very, very interesting division that got a lot more interesting within the last week or so.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? The NFC East, the NFC Beast, as I like to call it, there's always a spotlight on it, right? When you look at when the schedule comes out, all of the top teams with the most profiled games, it's the four NFC East teams at the top, even with the Giants sucking. And even the Washington has sucked for so long. But you already know they're going to play on Thanksgiving. They're going to play on Sunday nights, Monday nights. I want to start with Dallas just because that's where, like you said, the headlines were made. I never thought it was going to get to a situation where Micah was actually going to get traded because Terry McLaurin requests a trade, and Myles Garrett requests a trade, and TJ Watt requests a trade, and Trey Hendrickson. And what happens is all these guys get re-signed because these trade requests are so much of a leverage play. With Micah, it always felt a little more personal, this Micah versus Jerry Jones debacle. But I never thought it was going to get to a point where Micah got traded because, to his credit, and I can't give him that much, Jerry Jones does pay his guys. He paid Dak. He paid CD. He paid Zeke when the time came. Even going back, he paid guys like Tony Romo and Des Bryant when the time came. This guy is really the best player on your roster. He's the face of the franchise, a generational defensive. I guess they play him as an outside linebacker now in Green Bay. He's going to be a defensive end, and we'll talk about that when we get to the North. But like, you're talking about a guy who is one of only 2 players with 12 plus sacks in the first 4 years of his career. The other one is Reggie White, ironically traded from the NFC East to the Green Bay Packers. So it's just weird how this plays out. I didn't have high hopes for them anyways, but particularly because their defensive backfield is atrocious. Dan Quinn leaving just totally screwed them over. I hated the hire of Brian Schottenheimer at head coach. I think it's so lazy.
Yeah.
And it's a very Cowboys decision to make because Jerry can't have the head coach be better than he is.
Has
Just
to be
can't have
running
it.
the show.
Exactly. So their offense, like you said, I think is going to be great. CeeDee Lamb, I think, is going to be a wide receiver 1 candidate in fantasy football this year. Dak's going to put up big numbers. They have a weird committee of running backs. I think their rookie Jaden Blue might emerge as their lead guy. Obviously, they traded for George Pickens as well. Be a bit of a deep threat, take the top off defenses while CD works in the short and intermediate. But like, yeah, Dallas is a disaster. I think New York's also a bit of a disaster. This is such a make or break year for the tandem of Brian Daboll and Joe Shane.
Yes.
But what if their first round is looked back on tremendously? You get Abdul Carter, who was, in my opinion, the best player in the draft with the 3rd pick. He just falls into your lap. And then you trade back up for Jackson Dart, and we don't really like him, but they love him.
Yeah.
Like, they really believe in him. And Daboll's finally, for the first time, feels like he has a quarterback he wants. He never wanted Daniel Jones. He wanted
Josh Allen in Buffalo.
That's true. Nobody's going to get that ever again.
But I get what you mean as a head coach.
Yeah, in New York, he never had a quarterback he wanted, but he handpicked Jackson Dart for a reason. He's above Jameis Winston on the unofficial depth chart. I think it's going to be about 4 or 5 weeks before we actually see him. And I think Russ is going to be steadying the ship for a little bit. I'm going to be at their season opener at Washington, so I'll see how that plays out for them. They also added a lot of guys on defense. I think that'll be better, but I don't believe in their infrastructure. I don't believe in their coaching, and I still think their offense has a lot of work to go, because even if you improve at quarterback, where else on offense did they improve? They have nobody to catch the football, and they have nobody to run the football. Although Tracy's not a bad back. So really,
I mean, I like Neighbors. Like, I actually think the Giants.
That's true. I don't know why I forgot Malik Neighbors, but outside of Malik Neighbors.
Sure. The Giants are fascinating to me because it almost feels like, first of all, they have the most preposterous schedule maybe in the entire NFL.
Yeah, it's difficult.
I mean, like, you struggle to find wins week after week. Has to be one of the most difficult schedules. The fascinating thing to me is the fact that, like, I don't understand how they're so bad when it comes to win-losses when they have maybe the best defensive line in the NFL. Mm-hmm. You have a star you have a star wide receiver 1. Like, if they can get I understand, like, the quarterback position hasn't been there, but like Daniel Jones had a good year a couple of years ago. Like, he's not going to be a top 10 quarterback in the league, but sometimes you don't need that. Sometimes you can get by with a top 18 type quarterback in this league. It's just almost head scratching to me how poor they've truly been, because at certain positions, they're really, really strong.
Yeah. I don't believe that Brian Daboll's a bad coach. Like, I think if you're the Giants, he's about as good as you're going to get. I just think it's a poorly run franchise. And I think Joe Shane, listen, he had such a bad offseason last year that HBO was never going to air an offseason Hard Knocks ever again.
Right.
It was that bad. The way they let go of Barkley, the way they let go of McKinney, they didn't make a move for a quarterback. It was just such a disaster, like public humiliation ritual.
Yes.
So really, when you look at this division, man, it's a 2-horse race. We know the Eagles just won the Super Bowl. We know they have Hurts and Barkley and Brown and Smith and Goddard and the incredible offensive line. I think their defense might take a step back this year. They lose Josh Sweat. They lose Milton Williams. For what it's worth, they lose Darius Slay. They lose C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They're relying a lot on young guys. Now, granted, their young guys have been excellent. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter. Now you bring in Jahad Campbell in the first round. You bring in a guy like Andrew Makuba at safety, who probably by the end of the year is going to be starting over Reed Blankenship. Like, yeah, they're relying on first, second, third year players, but they are fantastic players to rely on. And Vic Fangio is just a remarkable defensive coordinator. What I think might knock them back a little bit is a lack of a pass rush that they had last year because they were so dominant on the defensive line. And I think their offensive line might take a little step back. I think losing Mekhi Becton might hurt them in the run game, especially. But Tyler Steen can do a good job. They still have Cam Jurgens, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson are the best tackle duo in the league. Eagles will be fine. I don't want to go crazy on Washington here. Everybody's going to expect me to come on here and say they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'd love to believe that's the case. But I wrote this in a preview article I wrote for my website when talking about the Commanders. This is just a very succinct way to describe what I think the season's going to be. It's a better team. They'll have a worse record. And I think that the season might have a worse end result. Are they going to go back to the NFC Championship game?
That's a hard thing to do.
It's so hard. It's the Final Four of the NFL, man. You can't just go back. But do I think this is a better team? No question. Gio, 12 months ago, when this team went down to Tampa Bay, their starting cornerbacks were Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St-Juste, and Michael Davis. On Sunday, when they play the Giants, it's Marshawn Lattimore, Trey Amos, and Mike Sanders still.
It's a completely different roster.
Completely different. They've overhauled the defensive back room. They've overhauled the offensive line with trading for Laramie Tunsil, drafting Josh Connerly. You move Brandon Coleman back inside. When Sam Cosmi returns from the ACL injury he suffered in the playoffs last year, real chance to be a top 10 offensive line in the league. I think it's going to be a huge strength. And again, last year, we thought it going into the season, I said it was the worst offensive line in the league. And I also said we had the worst secondary in the league. Now I think they could both be top 10 units in football. But when you talk about the Commanders, the story is number 5. And what to expect out of Jaden Daniels in year 2 with a better offensive line, maybe better pass catchers. Deebo Samuel comes in. They really like Jalen Lane, rookie out of Virginia Tech. He might be their starting slot receiver if Noah Brown is not healthy enough to play. Everybody loves the new running back, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the guy they call Bill. Who knows what he shows out of the backfield. But again, I just think the roster around this team is better. The roster around Jaden is better. And there's only so much we can say about him because everybody saw everything there is to know about Jaden Daniels last year. But if there's anything, if you have to say, Rosa, you can say one thing about Jaden this year, I will just say he's not going to have a sophomore slump. I'll put any sum of money on that. There's a better chance of him winning MVP than having a sophomore slump. The dude works way too hard. He loves the game too much. And I think the roster around him is just so much better than it was a year ago. I think he's going to have a better season. Maybe less running the ball, but I think from a pocket standpoint, he's going to be very good. Is it going to be good enough is it going to be good enough to dethrone the Eagles? We'll see. Really tall task. And the schedule, to your point, is really difficult. But I'm very pleased with the offseason we had.
Yeah, those Commanders-Eagles games are going to be awesome as the season progresses.
You know they don't play until week 16.
I know. And then they play each other twice in a 3-week span, right?
Like that is such a mistake on the part of the NFL. If you're going to have them play in the last game of the season, like in my opinion, Commanders Eagles should have been the opener, not Cowboys Eagles. But Dallas drives ratings, so
Sure. All right, let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about the NFC North. This is a very interesting division as well. Lions, Vikings, Packers, and Bears. Maybe even more fascinating 1 through 4 than any other division in the entire NFC here, because you're looking at a Lions team that obviously was really at the height of the franchise a year ago, and what Dan Campbell has built from the ground up, plain and simple, in the Motor City has been nothing short of incredible. You had moments last year where Jared Goff was an MVP frontrunner. The defense gets incredibly banged up. The season just kind of slips through their hands before they could even realize it was happening. It almost was like overnight, because you were feeling great when they beat the Vikings the last week of the season. Was it 17 or 18 that they played the Vikings for the division?
Yeah, that's 17 or 18. Week 18.
Week 18. There you go. I just wasn't sure which week it was. Obviously, that's a huge matchup with the Vikings. They come out and looked really good. Like Goff looked like the much better quarterback than Sam Darnold that day.
Jahmyr Gibbs, 4 touchdowns.
Exactly. Like you're feeling really good about it. And then all of a sudden you get that week off with the bye and they don't look like the same team at all against Washington. And it was on home turf in Detroit. So they're fascinating because of how much they lost as well. It's a revamped roster in maybe the wrong ways. Like it's almost like that window, right? We talk about that Super Bowl window, and it almost feels as if theirs has passed them by. with how this roster is constructed now. You're going to
Mhm.
get Aiden Hutchinson back, which is unbelievable considering his leg literally snapped in half
Yeah, it's
last
brutal.
year, and he's good to go week 1, no questions asked. So that's a plus. But this defense in particular looks very, very different for the Lions. You look at the Vikings, they look really different. They're all in on J.J. McCarthy, and he missed all of last year with a torn ACL. They move on from Sam Darnold after it looked like Sam Darnold was like pushing the envelope for
Mhm.
them making him their guy.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
people thought
instead,
they might trade JJ.
right. And instead, he falls apart at the end of the year and they deal him away. He's now a Seattle Seahawk. And the Vikings defense, we'll see what it looks like. They still have Justin Jefferson. Like, they're still going to have some weapons here to play with. Really curious to see what the Vikings are going to look like. And then you go to another deep team, the Packers. The
Mhm.
Packers are going like this. And I think this is when the Packers are going to arrive. I
Yeah.
actually thought it was going to be last year that they would arrive. I think a lot of people did. Maybe it's delayed a year. And this is the year
Mhm.
because Jordan loves a dog. I think that they're really well coached. I think that this is the year the Packers arrive. So then you
Mhm.
go, well, what do you do with the Bears? And we didn't have super high hopes for the Bears, but Caleb Williams is now in a position where, like, he's with Ben Johnson. And this is a hand-picked situation where Ben Johnson gets to pick his quarterback. He
Yep.
wanted to go to the Bears to have Caleb Williams. And we can look at Caleb and say, like, it's not his fault. He was in Matt Eberflus's year on his way out the door. Like
Mhm.
this is the start for Caleb. But like, is it too late? And you're in a division that's really hard.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, the small sample size we saw when the Bears played the Bills in the preseason, that offense was humming.
Mhm.
But how much of that is scripted? It's still only like 1.5 to maybe 2 quarters of football. It's the
Mhm.
preseason, and the Bills weren't playing anybody, nor do the Bills like have to take that game. Like that game meant a lot more for the Bears to show, hey, we've
Yes. That
arrived.
was their Super Bowl
Right.
on
Then
national TV.
right. Then for the yeah, exactly. It was Fox prime time,
Mhm.
Thursday night, I think, or Sunday night. Sunday night, I think. Like this was the Bears' chance to be like, we've arrived and show off this new offense and Caleb Williams. And for the Bills, they're like, we're not gonna play anybody. Have fun.
Here's Mike White.
Yeah. Literally, Mike White played most of that game. Even Mitch Trubisky didn't even play a lot of that game. So
Jeez.
um I just find this division incredibly fascinating. Like, do the Lions take a step down? Do the Vikings look similar to last year? I think the
Mhm.
Vikings won a lot of close games last year that,
They
like,
did.
maybe the ball rolls a couple of different ways and their record
Mhm.
doesn't look like what it looked like. This is just such a fascinating division. I could see 3 playoff teams in here and I could see 1 or 2 at the same time. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you're working with.
I mean, I like to give these divisions superlatives. Like if I had to pick one for the North, the NFC North, it would be like the division of moving parts.
Mm.
Because like nothing stays the same for very long here. I could be wrong about this. I think this was the first division in NFL history with 3 teams of 11 plus wins last year. And they combined
Very well
for
could be.
0 playoff wins.
It's crazy.
They all went one and
They all
done.
choked.
They were all. I mean, the Packers had to
Favorite.
go play the Eagles, so
Yeah, the Packers
these
fine. And it was in Philadelphia, but like the Lions were favored by a
the
large
Lions
margin.
were 10-point favorites against Washington, lost by 14 at home. The
Yeah,
Vikings, I'm pretty sure they were favored on a neutral site because that game got relocated to Arizona over the Rams. Rams took their lunch money. So,
that's right.
I mean, gosh, like where to begin? I'll start in Chicago because that's where you left off. I mean, people who know me know I have some strong feelings about this franchise and this new head coach and their quarterback and stuff like that. There's a better shot, I want to say, of it working out, of there being a marriage between Caleb and Ben Johnson that bears fruit than doesn't. I just am of the belief I need to see it to believe it. You had guys on TV, I won't name names, that said Chicago was going to the Super Bowl last year. That's ridiculous in hindsight. I had them as a playoff team last year, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm all high and mighty. We had we talked about expectations for Chicago. There were expectations in Chicago
The
last year.
roster was so good. Supposed to
On
be
pa-
so good.
People said it was the best situation that a number one pick has ever
Yep.
gone into. People said Waldron wasn't going to be a great offensive coordinator, that Eberflus was a good head coach. They had a good defense. They had great weapons, everything. And now people look back on it and tell me, well, actually, the offensive line wasn't very good. And Shane Waldron's actually not a good offensive coordinator. I was like, I didn't think Shane Waldron was a good offensive coordinator in Seattle. So that was always a problem for me. Really, the story was Caleb Williams just he was the most sacked quarterback in football last year. He took 68 sacks. Did you know that their offensive line was in the top half of the league in pass block win rate?
Really?
And he was still the most sacked quarterback in football.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Because he holds on to the
Yeah.
football for 17 years. This ain't the Pac-12 anymore. Now, is Ben Johnson going to coach that out of him? Maybe. We've seen his offenses work really well in Detroit. Obviously, they were an absolute freight train last year. But when the season was on the line against Washington, he said, Jamison Williams, you throw a pass down 10 in the fourth quarter. And he threw a pick and the game was over. Then Washington scores a touch. So for me, I think it's awesome you mentioned that preseason game. Ben Johnson, I think, wants us to think that he's the greatest thing ever because he thinks he's the greatest thing ever. The whole thing, honestly, Gio, it reeks of Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas 2 or 3 years ago. Like, I think there's a lot of egos at play. I don't know how coachable Caleb Williams is. I like their offensive personnel. They really upgraded the offensive line, particularly on the interior, and their defense is legit. But man, I'm still going to be a little more bearish on the Bears. Minnesota is an interesting situation because I think their defense got worse on the back end. They lose Cam Bynum and they lose Stephon Gilmore, but they really beefed up the interior with my boy Jonathan Allen and your boy Harrison Phillips. Their offensive line, people talk about the Bears remaking an offensive line. Minnesota's new offensive line is going to be really good. They bring in Will Fries. They draft Donovan Jackson. They bring in Kelly from Indianapolis. Like they have, in my opinion, from year over year, the best remade offensive line in the league. And they have Justin Jefferson. And they have TJ Hawkinson. Jordan Addison suspended for the first 3 games, but he's going to come back pretty soon and be good. Who knows what Jalen Naylor turns into? Maybe the rookie Ty Felton pops. And Aaron Jones is a pretty good running back. So Minnesota, listen, they're not going to win 14 games again. It comes down to JJ McCarthy. But listen, you could succeed as a quarterback in that offense.
They're also getting Christian Darrisaw back on the offensive line.
Exactly.
Who was banged up last year.
Exactly. So
you're going
to have. Of course, we love it's big weekend for former.
That's our alma mater for those that don't know. That's how this show came to be.
Exactly.
With our time in Blacksburg.
If you got to go deep into the archives for some VT got it covered. You're gonna have like Darrisaw, Jackson, Kelly, Fries. Like they're gonna have a really good offensive line, and then Brian O'Neill, who was one of the best right tackles in football last year. Like, in my opinion, I know people love the Lions. Vikings have the best offensive line in this division. We'll see how it goes with JJ. I wasn't high on him coming out of Michigan, but I think he's obviously got talent. And again, Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback wizard. Detroit, man. I used this line once in a preview like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm going to say it now. Detroit is my James Harden candidate of the year. You know what I mean by that?
Explain.
Step back.
Okay.
Frank Ragnow retires. Kevin Zeitler leaves for Tennessee. Aaron Glenn's gone. Ben Johnson's gone. They lose 6 different coaches.
Yeah, because they took everybody.
Terrell goes to New England to become the defensive coordinator. Antoine Randall leaves to go follow Ben Johnson to Chicago. Tight ends coach is gone. Everybody is gone. Now, they promote Kelvin Shepard from within to become the defensive coordinator. I like that hire. I like hiring from within. That's Aaron Glenn's son, essentially. What do we think John Morton's going to be replacing Ben Johnson? Those are huge shoes to fill. Now, the offense is kind of a self-sustaining machine because of the talent they have on that side of the ball. But the offensive line taking a hit really worries me, particularly on the interior. Are they going to be as effective running the ball as they were last year? And then who knows what they are on defense? Yes, Hutchinson comes back, but what does it look like coming off a broken leg? They draft Tyleek Williams to beef up the interior, which is great, but Aleem McNeil is hurt, and who knows how much time he's going to miss. Their linebackers, I don't really know what to expect. Jack Campbell's really good. I just don't know what the secondary looks like. You bring in DJ Reed, but you lose Carlton Davis, and they just had injuries out the wazoo last year. They were lucky to win 15 games last year. Their offense was good enough to carry them. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be one of the best players in the league this year, but I think this, like you said, is the year the Packers arrive. And to your point about us thinking it was last year, you got to remember, Jordan Love sprained his MCL in the first game of the season last year. He was just never the same player. So people like to say like, oh, Jordan Love was a disappointment last year coming off the way 2023 ended, which is true, but we got to take context into the equation here. Like, he got hurt in the first game of the year. He rushed his way back, and he just wasn't the same player. He was still 5th in QBR last year. I mean, like, that'll do. Now you trade for Micah Parsons. Their pass rush was awful last year. All of a sudden, it's got a huge boost. They trade Kenny Clark, which is fine. They still should be good against the run because Rashawn Gary is one of the best outside linebackers against the run. If their guys like Quay Walker develop and some of the other young guys they brought in on that side of the ball, their defense is going to be good. I just worry about their secondary because it kind of stinks, and they let go of Jair Alexander. So if Jeff Hafley's going to need to draw blood from a stone as it pertains to that defense, but I'm expecting a better Jordan Love. I'm expecting a better offensive line. Josh Jacobs is going to be very good again. The real question mark is who's the one in that wide receiver room? Is it Matthew Golden? They drafted him to be that. If Matthew Golden turns into a real X,
I think he could.
I think so too, man. He's fast. I just don't know if he has the route tree for it. But if Matthew Golden develops into the X, man, you're looking at a real even regardless, you're looking at a real Super Bowl contender because
I agree.
Parsons completely changes the equation in Green Bay. So I think
he's a game wrecker. He's one of those. He's one of those 10 players in the league that is a game changer.
100%. He completely changes the equation. So I thought they were the best team in this division before they traded for him. I certainly think that's the case now.
NFC South, Buccaneers, Falcons, Panthers, Saints.
A lot less to talk about.
So we'll keep it brief. We'll keep it brief for time's sake. Michael Penix with the Falcons. Bryce Young looked a little bit better with the Panthers last year. Mm-hmm. The Saints, good heavens. Interested to see what it looks like with Tyler Shuck, I guess.
I'm not.
Oh, no. But didn't they just name Desmond Ridder the starter? Or
Rattler's the starter.
Yeah. Spencer Rattler. Yeah.
Much better.
Anyways, I do think that the Buccaneers are legit. I love the Buccaneers. I think it's so cool to see Baker Mayfield literally resurrect his career. I think that offense is dynamite. I think Baker Mayfield has made himself probably a top 10 quarterback in the league. Definitely played like it last year. Like 1,000%. The numbers don't lie. Mm-hmm. We're really competitive in the postseason. Like, that was a good game. Like, that was a better game against Washington than Detroit and Washington from a head-to-head standpoint. So I like everything that Todd Bowles is doing with the Buccaneers, and I think they're just, again, going like this. So I have them winning the division with flying colors. And on top of it, I have them seriously contending once we get to our playoff conversation in a different video. So Buccaneers division, no question. And, the Falcons, maybe a couple of steps forward. You obviously made your decision where it's going to be Michael Penix going forward, it feels like, and kind of building around that. They do have some weapons in Atlanta, but it's just not enough. And then the Panthers, like, I could actually see everybody but the Saints making steps forward. And maybe not being as poor of a division as we're hyping it up to be. But I still think it's the Buccaneers, and it's not close.
I agree, but I like what you said at the end there. The Saints are doomed. The chickens have come home to roost.
It's okay. Somebody in every division has to be cooked. It's the National Football League.
But on a league-wide scale, man, the Saints are just chalked. I mean, like, Drew Brees and Michael Thomas are still on their payroll.
That's preposterous to think about.
The chickens have come home to roost. Funnily enough, they don't have the most dead money in the league. You know who does?
Dead money in the league.
Yeah, because you would think the Saints are number one. It's actually San Francisco.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say the Buccaneers because of the Tom Brady year. Like, I was just thinking,
but he did play out his contract in Tampa Bay, though.
He played out his contract. I was just thinking of the other players they added Like
True.
playoff Lenny,
Yep. And like Gronk and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
JPP and all this.
So
Yeah.
I was just
Uh,
thinking of all those kind of vets that they added and what did they cost?
yeah. So they're just a disaster waiting to happen. They have made their bed, now they're laying in it. Not even worth talking about that franchise right now. Carolina, man, I hope they don't suck. It would be really cool if they took not just one but two steps forward. I love Bryce Young, man. I'm not
Yeah,
high. I was high on him coming out of the draft, and like in the pros, I wasn't super high on him because he looked every bit as small
small.
as
Yeah,
he is. But man, I mean, who was a better quarterback in the last 3 weeks of last season, man? He had 10 total touchdowns, no turnovers.
sure.
And he was awesome, man. But now you bring in Tet McMillan or Tetaroa McMillan. His mom said, don't call him Tet. So, mom, I'm going to listen to you. Tetaroa McMillan, dog. Xavier Legette as a 2 could be really good. Their offensive line, man, is just abysmal. And who knows what the running backs look like? Because now you got Chuba Hubbard and you also have Rico Dowdle. That could be interesting. Their defense also was the worst in the NFL last year by a pretty comfortable margin. I don't think people realize how bad they were last year, which makes it kind of interesting. They spent the first round pick on a receiver for the second year in a row. But you can see that maybe Bryce and Dave Canales are figuring this thing out together. It's a make or break year for Bryce Young, in my opinion. I just don't think they have the defense, and I don't know if they can consistently produce offensively the way they did at the end of last year. So it might be it may be improved, but a bit of a dud. Atlanta's really interesting, man, because they won 8 games last year. They lost their last 2 games of the year in overtime.
True.
So they're this close away from being a 10-7 football team, which would have won them the division. Like Kirk was up and down, but he had his moments, and then Penix only played 3 games, so we have no clue. But his tape has epic highs and epic lows. I know you and I both really liked Michael Penix at Washington. He throws a pretty ball, man. I just kind of worry that despite them having Drake London and Bijan Robinson, like Raheem Morris, man, I don't know about Raheem Morris in Atlanta. I didn't really like it last year. I didn't like that hire for them to begin with. And I don't know if their defense is going to be able to keep up because even though they drafted 2 pass rushers in the first round, they get Jalen Walker and then they trade back up for James Pierce Jr. I thought that move was awful. Like I don't know if Terry Fontenot has much time left in Atlanta. So like, do I like the young pieces they have? Absolutely. Do I think it's going to work out this year? I don't think so. Tampa Bay, Baker's amazing. Their offensive line has turned into a pretty good one. And they have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin when he comes back, Jalen McMillan when he comes back because he hurt his neck in the preseason. And now you draft Emeka Ibuka in the first round. I mean, holy smokes. I could throw to those guys. But to your point about that game against Washington last year, man, they couldn't stop a nosebleed. They didn't sack Jaden Daniels once. They didn't force a turnover. That defense will need to step up if they want to contend. Because to your point, I think they can make a run, dude. Tampa Bay is a sneaky 1 seed candidate because of how easy their schedule is.
1000%.
But I think we saw last year what having a deficient defense can do. I think it's going to hurt them down the stretch.
Last but not least, NFC West, Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks, and 49ers. What are we going to get out of the 49ers? They were decimated with injuries last season. So what does that look like this year? Because let's not forget, this is still the San Francisco 49ers, right? And so many of the pieces are still there. The Seahawks, mentioned it. Sam Darnold is now the starting quarterback. Geno Smith is no longer in Seattle. On top of it, I think the situation gets significantly worse for Sam Darnold than he experienced in Minnesota. Like, who's he going to throw the ball to? Because DK's gone and playing in Pittsburgh. And on top of it, again, like Tyler Lockett's not there either. So where are you going to go with the football? So that's a head scratching situation. I don't think the defense is great in Seattle either. The Cardinals, I think, could be a little bit sleepy. I think if there's a sleeper pick to make a little bit of noise or like get your best value on a team to make the playoffs, it would be the Cardinals. I don't think they have winning the division juice. But I think Kyler Murray started to catch a little bit of steam towards the end of last year, and we'll kind of see how that plays out. If the downfield passing game can arrive, because they were lower in the NFL, towards the bottom of the NFL in downfield passing, which is surprising because they had Marvin Harrison Jr. If that can get going, watch out for the Cardinals offense to kind of turn things up a notch. And then the Rams, Matt Stafford, it comes out recently that he's going into the season injured, playing with an injury. Like, he's going to play, but we'll see how that, has a factor here. No matter what, though, like, I just feel like the Rams are so well coached. Sean McVay seems to make anything work and win with anybody. He won a couple of games with Baker Mayfield at the quarterback spot, like on this weird in between phase. So, not that Baker's not great in Tampa Bay, but at the time we were, writing away Baker Mayfield's career in the National Football League. So I think Sean McVay finds ways to win with anybody, including a slightly banged up Matt Stafford, who's towards the end of his career. The Rams defense should be solid. It wasn't great last year, especially down the home stretch. Like, they gave up a lot of points. I bring you to like that Bills game where it's just like a shootout. Now, Buffalo could score with anybody, so that's a tough example. But the secondary in particular really struggled last year down the stretch for the Rams. We'll see how they make improvements there. Another fascinating division here. I think the team I like to come out is the Rams, but again, watch out for the Cardinals, and definitely the 49ers are going to be in the mix. Seahawks, probably not this year.
It is very interesting. It is the wild, wild west. Like, something happens in this division every year we just don't expect. Seattle definitely downgraded at quarterback. I think, Geno was such a consistent guy for them. And you talk about situation. Geno always, I felt like, made the best of a bad situation. Again, Shane Waldron was his play caller, and they have a horrible offensive line, and he was still able to put up good numbers. He's one of the best quarterbacks against the blitz, and he's the second most accurate deep ball quarterback last year behind just Joe Burrow. Now you bring in Darnold. The offensive line still kind of stinks. And to your point, they get rid of DK and Tyler Lockett. But the reason for that is because Jackson Smith and Jigba emerged as their wide receiver one last year. I think because Darnold is going to have to get the ball out so quickly, JSN's probably in for a really big year. And he had a great year last year. He had something like 90-something catches, over 1,000 yards, close to 10 touchdowns. Like, I think he's going to be a clear-cut top 10 to 12 receiver in the league this year. They like that kid, Torrey Horton. I don't really know what else that they're going to work with in the passing game. For what it's worth, they have a solid running back tandem in Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Their defense should be interesting, man. They draft that kid, Nick Emanwari, who's like athletic freak of nature in the second round. Is he going to be their next Cam Chancellor? Who knows? But you got guys like Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen on that side of the ball who are pretty good. I just worry that they're going to fall behind. Cardinals, to your point, Gio, I think are sneakily, from top to bottom, one of the most improved rosters in the league, particularly on defense, man. You draft Will Johnson, you draft Walter Nolan, you sign Josh Sweat. That's three huge pieces to bolster your run defense, your pass rush, and your secondary. They got it just like that. Drew Petzing as an offensive coordinator is a guy I have beef with because, to your point, they did not utilize Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. The tape didn't lie, man. He was getting open down the field, but Kyler is so reliant on checking the ball down to James Conner, or just when in doubt, throw the ball to Trey McBride. And those are fine things to do because Conner and McBride are fantastic players. But you did not draft Marvin Harrison Jr. 4th overall for no reason. And he is, despite a season last year that didn't live up to the guys like Neighbors and BTJ, or even like Lad McConkey for that matter, he is a fantastic player. He is the type of prospect we know that he is. So if they get him more involved in the downfield passing attack, man, this offense could go shoop, because they've got a decent line. They've got a good running back. I still think Kyler's a good player. I don't know how coachable he is. I like Jonathan Gannon as a head coach. I just really don't like their offensive play calling. So that might hold them back a little bit this year. San Francisco, man, even if they're healthy, what are they on defense? Like, I talk about Philly being a team relying on young guys. San Francisco is really relying on young guys. You get rid of Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, Charvarius Ward, Javon Hargrave, and you replace them with guys like Alfred Collins, Michael Williams. I think maybe Diamador Lenore steps up and becomes a really good corner. You still have Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, so that obviously goes without saying, but like they are banking on these young guys to work. And you bring back Robert Saleh, that could be a good hire, but who knows? You know, it's like with a lot, Saleh as a coordinator is really good. Saleh as a head coach wasn't. So they're hoping for the Saleh that brought them to the Super Bowl,
Right.
and not the Saleh that was in New York. But to your point, man, the Rams just feel like the best team. You already had Stafford, Nakua, Williams. Now you bring in Devontae Adams. Their defense, again, relied a lot on young guys, but they remade it overnight like Philadelphia did, man. That defensive tackle Turner is a dog. Jared Verse was defensive rookie of the year. Their secondary is not good, and I don't feel like it got much better. So that might hold them back too. But to your point, Gio, like the Rams feel like the best of a bunch of teams that have potential, but I don't know that they can reach them. Like this is the division that I feel like could produce a really good regular season team that
And not,
fizzles
yeah,
out in the postseason.
1000%. That defense did significantly get better when you look at it on paper. Like week 6, once they started really getting Jared Verse more involved instead of like easing him in and just kind of threw him into the fire, that defense, that pass rush in particular, really improved.
Yeah, he's a dog, and I think he could be in for a much improved season. Like to your point, on paper, he didn't have the greatest year, but then like in that playoff game against Minnesota, dude, he was
Yeah.
unguardable. He was
Some
insane.
some of their numbers are so skewed because before Jared Verse, they like the impact he had, their numbers are much better after that point, but they're skewed because of the averages of it all.
Exactly. And on the flip side, right, you had Puka Nakua getting hurt early in the year, so their
Right.
offense sucked at the start of last year too. But when like Nakua is such an impact guy that when he's in the lineup, they're just so much better. Like what they started 1-4, 1-5 last year and finished like 10-7. So we'll see what it looks like. I hope Matt Stafford's situation's better than we think it is, because if not, they could be like, you could look at to your Cardinals, man, they could soar and win the division. Who knows?
Sure. All right, we've talked about each division. Now it's time to fully predict the regular season of the NFC. Raza, I'll let you go first. This is how you have the NFC shaking out. Eagles taking it home. How about the Packers at 2? Break it down for us.
Yeah, this is another situation, man, where people are going to get on my case because 6 of the 7 teams are ones that made it from last year. I just subbed in the 49ers.
What is this, the AFC?
I know, man, I know. But like the problem is you kind of just have to go with coaching and rosters, like Kyle Shanahan's a good head coach. I think they're going to get in. All those other teams, I think, are really, really well coached. Like people are going to rush to put the Bears in the playoffs, but we've never seen Ben Johnson be a head coach. If people like Dallas, I would say why. And we also have not seen Brian Schottenheimer. Seattle is a situation where they almost got in last year, but I just don't know with first year under new quarterback. So I like the Eagles at 1. They still feel like the best roster from top to bottom, and they are the champs. So to beat the champs, you got to beat the champs. Green Bay at 2, man. This is a team that I already had high hopes for. Now that they have Parsons, my hopes are even higher. Again, I think the Rams are going to be a pretty good regular season team. I worry about what they're going to look like once we get to January. And then the Bucks, again, sneaky 1 seed candidate. There's only 2 games separating the 1 from the 4. So if they can turn a couple of those losses into wins, man, they could be playing a lot of home playoff games. And then I like the 49ers to get back because, again, I really like their offensive personnel. I just worry that they don't have a lot of players to catch the ball. They're dealing with so many injuries right now, but hopefully CMC is healthy, and I love Brock Purdy. I think Washington gets back in as a wild card team again as a 6 seed because Jaden is still very good, and they improved that roster. They just aren't going to be able to get over the Eagles hump. And then I think the Lions still sneak in because, to your point, Dan Campbell is a psycho. Their offensive personnel is nuts, and their defense can't possibly be worse than it was at the end of last year. So Seahawks and Vikings are on the outside looking in. Cardinals have a higher ceiling than we might think and maybe a lower floor, so they could be competitive all year. Same with the Falcons. But then once you get past them, Cowboys, Panthers, Bears, Saints, Giants, I think are going to be some of those first teams to get eliminated because I just don't think that they're going to be able to keep up over the course of 3 or 4 months.
So we agree with our champ at the top of the regular season in the NFC, and then it's a lot of the same teams, but it looks a little bit different as far as the order goes and everything like that. So here's how I have the NFC shaking out. And I'm going to preface this by saying I don't know what was going through my head. It must have been late at night as I was picking these games, because we really do go game by game. We did this with college, we do it with the NFL. We go game by game and pick every game and just see how it shakes out at the end. And this is how it shook out. And I have some head scratchers that I'm questioning my own thought process on a couple of different things. But I'm sticking to my guns on this one. Eagles taking it. I have no question about that. The Rams. I have the Rams at 13-4, 6-0 in division play. I think the Rams, if everything plays out well, I think they're one of the best coach teams in the NFC, and that's why I have them so high. So if Stafford looks the part, if the defense can make things look strong, the way it shakes out with their division, I have them at the 2. I have the Buccaneers soaring, also 13-4, undefeated in the division. The Lions, we both kind of have them regressing, taking a step back, but I have them winning the division, so ultimately taking that 4 seed. The Commanders, I have them very solid, right behind the Eagles, 12-5, 5-1 in the division. 49ers right there, 12-5, 3-3 in the division. And then my last playoff team is the Packers. You had them as your 2. I have them as my 7. It just comes down to a couple of different games, 11-6, but 4-2 in the division. I have the Packers in the playoffs. Outside looking in. So actually, we have all of the same playoff teams.
That's right.
Out of the NFC. And then I have the Vikings outside looking in. 10-7, like in some scenarios, 10-7 is enough to get it done. Not this year for the Vikings, Seahawks, Cowboys, Cardinals. I mentioned the Cardinals. If there's a sleeper team in the entire NFC, I'm saying it's the Cardinals to get into the playoffs, because like the Vikings, you couldn't call a sleeper, right? They're just on the outside looking in. Like if there's a sleeper team, it's the Cardinals, Panthers, Falcons, Bears, Giants, and then the Saints. For what it's worth, you and I were talking about this earlier. There's never been a 1-16 finish ever in the history of the National Football League. Granted, they've only been playing 17 games for what, 4 years now?
Yeah, this is year 5. I think 21 was the first year they did it. So
I have
and
2
also
1-16 teams.
Also, here's what I'll say. I think we had like 6 of the 7 playoff teams from last year in both conferences make it. And I think we both had the same 4 division winners from last year in the AFC. And I know you have the same 4 this year, and I have 3 of the 4 this year. In like all but 2 or 3 of the years of this century, the 21st century, there's a team that's gone from worst to first. There wasn't one last year. That was the first time in a while. But like maybe a team like San Francisco can do that.
I mean, the Commanders were close to it.
Commanders came this close. There's always going to be somebody that knocks your socks off. I said Washington was a 6-11 team last year, and they went 12-5 and went to the title game, and it was magical. People thought the Bears were going to be good last year, and they weren't. You know, people have high hopes for a team like Green Bay last year, and they kind of fizzle out. So, like, these are predictions. This is why we do it. You know, to look back on it, and either if we were right, we'd be like, I told you so. You know, you so on and so forth, or people can laugh at us. So like, I'm ready for either outcome, because this is
I'm sure it's going to be much of the latter.
Honestly, with this league, I would not be remotely surprised. Because what if the Giants come out and Jackson darts Jaden Daniels? You know, like what if we all dunk on the Giants?
They got a good offensive head coach.
Exactly. So anything can happen, man. That's why this is the beauty of the game we love so much. So just 2 days away. Can't wait to get into it.
2 days away. Can't wait. All right. Well, be on the lookout because we have plenty more content. We are just churning out the content, especially this week now that NFL and college football are overlapping and starting. We get our first combo weekend coming up. We still have to predict our playoffs and our postseason awards for the NFL. Be on the lookout for that. And before you know it, end of the week's going to be here, and we're going to be making our weekly picks for college football and the NFL. So we got a lot. We got work to do, my friend. But yeah. Until then, we appreciate you hanging out with us. As always, refer the show to your friends, like, comment, subscribe, and join us on social media as well. You can find it everywhere at Got It Covered FB. Till then, for Raza, I'm Giovanni Heater, and we'll see you next time.